Colleges and universities across the nation are about to begin their spring semesters. So we thought it would be a good time to talk with the chair of the Senate Higher Education Committee about the challenges facing the institutions and post-secondary students. Senator Paul Anderson now joins me in the studio. Thanks for being here.
Thanks. Glad to be back.
So as I understand it, state funding for higher education peaked prior to the Great Recession in the late 2000s. Following the Great Recession, enrollment surged, which allowed the budgets to be okay. But since then, enrollment is in decline. The funding from the state has not gone back to pre-recession levels. And so these colleges and universities are facing budget problems. Will, in your view, state contributions ever return to pre-recession levels? And if not, what does that mean for our state colleges and universities?
Well, it's a great question. I think if you look at it from a global perspective, and I actually had this chart in my office during last session, going back to the 90-91 budget here at the Capitol, higher education was 14% of the general fund budget. After last session, it's 6.5% of the budget. And if you look at that, again, globally from the statewide budget, what's really sucks the oxygen out of the room is health and human services. And so as that's grown over these last 20, 30 years, it's really pushed out things like investment in higher education. So as we've maybe not kept pace with that percentage, I still think there's significant investments in higher education in both the university system, in MnState, and also the state grant program. So we can't get lost in what's actually happened. There is significant investment.
Significant investment, but not pre-recession levels.
Correct. And I think this is an actual sign of things to come. I think when you talk about what's going on in higher education, you're seeing declining enrollment, you're seeing other factors that we need to rethink higher education. It's a system that nationally is broken. And I think as we go forward and we see these trends, this is not just Minnesota, this is nationally. And so you look at states across the nation, this is not just a Minnesota situation, this is national. And so we need to make these investments in higher education, but we also need to hold the institutions accountable, not just to say this is a marketplace decision on how they're spending money or they're asking for money from state tax dollars, but how they're spending it and how they're allocating it and how they're strategically moving forward.
Well, nationally, student debt has reached more than $1 trillion. And an educated electorate is important both for democracy and for the economy. And this student debt is weighing on our economy. So the presidential candidates at the national level, some of them are talking about a public role in eliminating student debt. Should taxpayers continue to subsidize higher education, and to what degree?
Well, again, this comes back to the debate we're going to have here this session and also going forward. We've got a massive situation coming in 2025 with a great reduction in the students that will graduate from high schools here in Minnesota and across the country. It's going to hit that declining enrollment to these institutions where they're going to have to face the reality of they're going to have to do business differently. And so in this case, yes, we need to invest in the systems, we need to invest in higher education, but we also have to have the university and MnState and our other institutions take a look at how they're going to do business differently to reduce costs. Because in the end, we can talk about retiring debt, we can talk about ways to make it more affordable, but the institutions have to figure out ways to reduce costs.
Well, and to that degree, then, the University of Minnesota Duluth has not had a balanced budget since 2011. They've announced faculty and staff cuts, the merging of some disciplines. On the other hand, the Minnesota State System of Colleges and Universities just completed a Reimagining initiative, which was fascinating to read. So higher education is in the midst of a big shift. As you're saying, what do you think that looks like?
Well, and the University of Minnesota Duluth situation is indicative of what's going on again across the country. In the last 10 years, they've had a reduction in their student enrollment by about 1,000 students. That's real money when it comes to their revenue and how they allocate and how they spend money. And so I appreciate the internal discussion. I know this is real for the people of Duluth and looking at maybe even posing the conversation of us versus them. But I really think President Gabel stepped out and has committed to retiring the debt that they've been incurring and have been sitting on. This will alleviate some stress there. But in the end, this is again, in the Reimagine program that MnState has gone through, this is how we're going to have to rethink higher education. How do you go, our 4 pillars in the Senate Higher Education Committee is affordability, accountability, accessibility, and relevancy. Those 4 pillars. And we have to have higher education look at this, understand the trends that are coming, and not just come to the taxpayers and say, you need to subsidize our situation, because if we don't make the changes, we are all in trouble. In the high-tax state, again, investments in higher education are very important. We can't expect the taxpayer payers to just subsidize the problems of higher education. It has to reinvent itself.
Well, and one issue that people point to, it was in the news recently, and some of your Republican colleagues sent a letter to the Board of Regents calling the proposed $500,000 salary of a new provost tone deaf when you consider the budget constraints and the high tuition. Should there be checks on administrative salaries?
Yeah. Well, yes, and actually last session we actually asked the university and MnState to do a report on how they would go about reducing 10% of administrative costs. So I'm anxiously waiting, both systems coming forward with that information. But this is a situation where for higher education to simply say this is a marketplace situation, that we need to pay what the marketplace is not actually recognizing the problem that is the failures or the cracking of the higher education industry. I think we're really hitting a situation in the next 5 years where these declining enrollments, you can't just, again, subsidize it with taxpayer dollars. So there has to be some really important decisions. Now, with regards to President Gabel hiring the new provost, we also have to allow her to do her job, and this is a very important hire, and what she's told me personally is that I need this person to do the changes and make the effective change that I want to do going forward. So I take her at her word, and I trust that going forward. I think it's challenging for those. It is tone deaf to say that on a PR level, to say this is marketplace driven, because again, who is going to end this? If not now, when are we going to address the situation of out of control costs of higher education?
In recent years, there's been great emphasis and investment in STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math. When budgets are tight, though, the humanities tend to be the area that's cut. A recent Bloomberg opinion by Andrea Gaber suggests that tech companies are actually looking for people with liberal arts training because of their communication skills and their creative thinking ability. She goes on to say that creativity, more than skills, is an intrinsic aspect of American ingenuity and business prowess. So what is the role of humanities? How does it fit into this picture?
Well, I think it's important, but it's also important to find a new way forward. And so there's not a this or a that, it's a combination, because we do need the dreamers and the creative class to come into the conversation of how we train our workforce going forward. There's a great conversation, I've had this from high school level to college to universities, which is we need to teach more on how to learn instead of what to learn. And I think there is a piece of that creative class and arts and humanities that come into it to make sure people are thinking creatively, and the adaptation of artificial intelligence and other things coming into play, that you can't just look at what to learn, it's how to learn. So I think it's a hybrid. I mean, we desperately need the emphasis on STEM, but we also need the humanities piece of this too. I just don't know if there's a situation where we need a focus on one or the other. I think it's a hybrid approach going forward.
And one final question before we go, because you mentioned technology and artificial intelligence, which is changing our work and life landscape. There's also humanities and creative thinking. Then there's also equality. There are people with, there's educational inequity, and then there's non-traditional students, traditional students, urban, greater Minnesota. How do we, I mean, there's a lot of moving pieces.
There's a lot of moving pieces. I think everybody has to come to the table here. I mean, you just addressed it. Students coming out of high school that are looking for opportunities, that might be in the military, that might be in the workforce, that might be in higher education. You've got people that are going to be transferring skill sets that might be coming out of one industry into another. How do you train them really quickly? The aging workforce, we've got an untapped aging workforce that sometimes are prohibited from entering different positions. Employers aren't going to sit back and say, I'm going to pick and choose. They need everybody to come to the table. We also have an incredible workforce in the disability community that can contribute to the economy. So we need everybody to come to the table. We need higher education to step up. and work alongside with industry, with business partnerships and employers to say, how are we going to do this? How are we going to move forward? And I'm confident in Minnesota, the state of innovation, we're going to do that.
Senator Paul Anderson, thank you so much.
Thank you.